DDG episode 187. My name is Dave, and I'm joined by Michael.
How's it going, Dave? I don't
How are you?
have jet lag. I'm just saying that outright. Might be a little punchy. I can't say that anymore because now that attracts the cat and stay punchy. But I'm doing good, Dave. How's it going?
I'm good. Things are seems to be kind of settling and getting back to whatever routinistic normalcy that is in the world for me at the moment. So things are starting to flatten out a little bit, I guess, is the best way to describe it. But
yeah,
it's been really hot.
I was just in Vegas for 5 days, and it was the coldest it got was 93 degrees, and at peak it was 113.
Oh my gosh.
Consistent.
That's crazy. So. All right, so we are Digital Days Gaming. We are a weekly podcast that posts on Thursday on podcast services. If you are listening to us, you know how to find us, so please consider subscribing. If we're not on a service that you use, let us know. We also stream the show on Twitch, twitch.tv/Digital Days Gaming, where you can watch us live, typically on Tuesdays around 9 o'clock. And that's linked in the show notes. Also, you can subscribe to us on Twitch, as we are a Twitch affiliate. So please, if you're willing to do that, check that. If it's something you've done in the past, please just kind of give it another look and see if it's something you need to renew. The Prime subs do not auto-renew. So you kind of have to periodically check those. We don't have to be live for you to do that. So for those of you that have done that, thank you very much. It's much appreciated. And those of you that are listening on podcasts that download it, just any kind of sharing and reviewing you can do for the show helps tremendously. Other than that, everything else for you to join the community is linked in the show notes, and we're going to jump right into the news.
Yeah, the first story, it got kind of refuted a little bit, but I think it was mostly refuted because someone made a mistake in talking. But the first story is Hasbro wants the Transformers games on Game Pass. So Hasbro had some reps last week in an interview say that they are very interested in bringing the Transformer games over to Game Pass now that Activision has been, acquired by Microsoft. Activision with like Beanox and was it Half Moon Studios are the developers of the Transformers games, and Hasbro would very much like those to be brought over to Game Pass now. Some people were like, oh, cool, they want to like preserve those games. It's like, no, they'll get a licensing fee if those games hit Game Pass, so they very much would like free money. But they said the only problem is that they believe Activision have lost the hard drives that those games are on. And while they believe Activision does have the hard drives, they know they're somewhere in the Activision like headquarters. They just don't know where they are currently. Now, this was refuted a little bit because Hasbro proper came out this past today, actually, and said, like, oh, no, there was a misunderstanding. We do look forward to maybe working with Activision and Xbox in the future. But basically, they were trying to, like, make it sound like Activision isn't completely incompetent and lost the hard drives that these games are on. But, yeah, Dave, I thought this would be a good one is because I feel like you would be interested in playing some of those Transformers games either for the first time or again because they are
probably the first time because I don't know if I remember very many good Transformer games, and it might have been in that time where I really wasn't playing very many games.
Yep, it's at early to mid PS3 era.
Yep. And then do you honestly think that like these things are kept on like metal hard drives that are like stored away in a file cabinet somewhere? Like, do you think that's how archives work for real?
Yes. So there's a
there's not a digital backup of this?
If it's old enough, no. This has actually happened before with Square Enix. So they had lost the source code files. This is what they're talking about. They're talking about like source code files. The source code for Kingdom Hearts were lost or deleted or something. And when they were remaking Kingdom Hearts for the PS3, they had to rip the retail copies of the PS2 game and then remodel the game from that, as opposed to using the source code. So there was a lot of extra work that needed to be done, as opposed to using like the original files. They had to extract from a retail disc and then work off those.
I get that part, but like when was that?
So Kingdom Hearts 1 came out in 2002, and I want to say the remakes were like 2011, 2013-ish.
So you don't think that like any of this stuff is digitized at the moment somehow?
Or
backed up onto some massive like server drive that's in like the CEO's office or something?
You would hope it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these companies just based on how many companies have been hacked, like that they just keep stuff like offline somewhere. Especially the Hasbro person actually had a good point in the original statement that I didn't include. That was basically like, hey, when companies eat up other companies, sometimes stuff just gets thrown together and someone has to like fish things out.
Yeah, I get it, but you're talking about this. You're like, I'm visualizing this being on like 3 or 4 like zip drives.
Yeah,
like chilling somewhere, like really, or somebody like flicks a thumb drive at somebody, and here you go, here's Transformers.
Yeah, I need to see. Yeah, the first game that Hasbro would be talking about is from 2007. So I wouldn't be surprised if like the 2014, 2015, 2020 Transformers games, those are probably backed up digitally somewhere.
Okay.
But when you're talking about like 2007, 2009,
does Activision own Hasbro gaming rights?
No, but they own those Transformers games because they developed them.
Okay.
But they would still need to work out some sort of agreement with Hasbro if they want to re-release and re-profit off those games.
Okay.
So Hasbro basically is just like, hey, we're okay with it if someone wants to pay us the licensing cost to like re-release those. Mm-hmm. This was remember the Deadpool game that Activision made?
Vaguely.
Okay, it was a game I reviewed back in the day. Thanks, Dave.
Wait, you reviewed games like with words?
Yeah, and like a lot of words. People kind of hated that.
I didn't read those. I just scrolled to the bottom, look at the score, and then comment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why I was always against having a score, because I would write 2,000, 3,000 words and be like, I got to put a number on this.
Actually, I wouldn't comment because we had to sign into something stupid. I would just go to Twitter.
Yeah, that too. I always hated separate sign-ins for comment section. That's why I don't comment on things anymore, because I want you to have like a new account to comment on shit. But back in the PS3, Activision made a Deadpool game. They lost the license, removed them, delisted the game from all the stores, and then
okay.
Halfway through the PS4 era, they worked out a deal with Marvel, and then got to put the game back up on the store. So there'd be the same case with these Transformer games. They just would need to ask Hasbro's permission, pay whatever license fee Hasbro needs or wants, and then they'd be good to release this again. But it at least shows there's no excuse now, for Microsoft or Activision to be like, oh, Hasbro doesn't want it. Hasbro very much is like, please re-release these games.
But this deal still hasn't like officially gone through, right? Like this hasn't been like rubber stamped, right?
Not officially, but basically there's no blockers.
No, I mean I know it's going through, but I assume that when this goes through, like we'll probably have a similar like state of Active Blizzard like we did with State of Bethesda.
Yeah, within like
right?
1 to 3 months of the deal closing, I would imagine you do something, and then this is when you do the Game Pass announcement. I'm sure Phil Spencer, Microsoft, as soon as they heard this Hasbro news, they're like, put me in contact with Hasbro. Let's pre-work on this agreement, because that would be an easy win for Game Pass. To even though most of the games are pretty mid for the Transformers games, it's still a content filler.
But that's kind of like the point of like the middle tier, like are the minutia of Game Pass. Mm-hmm. Like that's kind of the point of it, is just to have stuff on there, just to be like, oh, I want to mess with that a little bit. And like there's always going to be like, whether it's Netflix, PS Plus, Game Pass, Paramount Plus, any of those stuff, there's always like 1 or 2 things that draw your attention, and then there's that mid stuff that's like 8 through like whatever, like on a scale of 1 to 10, like 5 through 8, and then there's the garbage, and like this Transformer stuff would fall in that 5 through 8 tier.
No, and again, perfect filler in terms of like, hey, you're scrolling through Game Pass and you're like, oh, I know what Transformers are, and when we talk about the Activision games, I just pulled it up. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like 7 or 8 games of Transformers games that they could just fill out there, and then maybe it would spark, Hasbro to like go to Activision again and be like, hey, we're not going to stop making movies and cartoons. You want to keep making the games, and then you would get exclusive Transformers games basically for Game Pass. But yeah, this is kind of cool. This is the kind of stuff that I want to see happen with this merger, is just like bringing back a lot of these old games. Mm-hmm. If the companies that Activision had a lot of licensed things, so as long as the partners are good for it.
That's the part. Like I know we've talked about this before, but like that's the real part that I'm super interested of. Like what What has Activision or Blizzard been making that's 60 or 70 or 70% done that either got slowed down or got pushed off to the side, or what's going to be, and I'm not saying that this was a 60 or 70% completed game, but what's going to be their hi-fi rush? Like, what's going to be a game that they're going to be green light to finish or to make in 12 or 18 months or less, that Microsoft is like, yep, we're doing that. Like, that's we're going to finish it.
Neversoft was, or whatever they're called, what were they, Vicarious Visions.
Yeah.
When they finished the Tony Hawk remake, they were beginning the work on Tony Hawk's, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 remake. Mm-hmm. And then Activision was like, hold on, stop. You're now Blizzard. There's a chance that, Xbox, Microsoft, Phil Spencer are going to be like, hey, we know maybe the game had like 10% work done, but like, you guys want to finish it? And mm-hmm. they can do that, especially if you're talking about you want to talk about something that would be great to fill content on Game Pass. Start remaking those Tony Hawk games mm-hmm. and pump those out, especially, EA is going to bring back Skate, so there's going to be interest in it. And then there's all the Marvel games that they worked on, and some of the obscure first-person shooters that they were working on.
Everybody keeps pointing at, like I've seen on social media the last month or so, everybody keeps pointing out, well, look at what Microsoft did to Rare. Like, where's Banjo-Kazooie and all that crap? I keep seeing that stuff. And I honestly think at this point in time, with the way that Microsoft has handled their studio acquisitions, if Rare wanted to make a Banjo-Kazooie game, Microsoft would let them. So I think it's very apparent that they don't want to.
Yeah, especially the people that made Banjo-Kazooie had left Rare long ago. You're no one that was on that Banjo-Kazooie game is probably at Rare anymore.
Right.
Therefore, they won't have interest in making another Banjo game. And I really think when they added Banjo and Kazooie to Smash Brothers 2-3 years ago, that was probably a litmus test of like, hey, if enough buzz on this player announcement happens, his character announcement, maybe we go back into it. And there probably just wasn't enough buzz that they got from including them in Smash.
The more research I've been doing and the reading on stuff, I just think that Microsoft has been getting a little bit of a bad rap on how it deals with studios. 100% granted, they haven't been able to release the stuff that they've been purchasing from. What have we seen? Like Psychonauts 2, we haven't seen Outer Worlds 2, we haven't seen Obsidian's, what's it? Avowed. Yeah. I get all that stuff, but we're not seeing a whole bunch of people saying Microsoft's fucking us. Like, we're not seeing that in the last 18, 24 months. Therefore, I don't expect that to happen with Activision, and I feel like the underlying tones that came out of this when Bethesda was being interviewed during this Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, FTC, CMA crap is that Bethesda's, when you really got to asking them about the acquisition, and it was, our lives are easier.
Yeah, except for those emails that leaked that were like,
right. Well,
please get your messaging right.
But the confusion part of it is there. But the development standpoint, I think the developers feel like their lives are easier. Like, Pete Hines pretty much came out and said there's no way Starfield would be coming out next month if it had to be on multiple. It had to be on 3 platforms instead of 2.
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to like Starfield, you're 100% right. Specifically because like Phil Spencer basically said that when Redfall came out, of like, we've been very hands off as much needed, or we've been hands on when needed on Starfield, as opposed to Redfall, where they saw that was a trash fire and they're like, just let it be. Mm-hmm. But that was also them just being like, hey, Bethesda, this is your mess that you wanted, and take care of it. So it's like a double-edged sword when it comes to like how they handle stuff, because I'm sure Redfall kind of kicked them in the ass a little bit, and then that's why they're like, okay, we're gonna go more hands-on with Starfield. We're delaying it like twice, and we're gonna get this shit right. And that was like a blessing for Bethesda, because it looks like Starfield might be one of the more polished Bethesda games released like ever. So yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot of developers have a problem working with Xbox.
I've just seen a lot of stuff, like, as this deal is starting to go through and more interviews and more people are talking about stuff and giving their opinions, and they keep pointing back to like Scalebound and look what Microsoft did. Like, that was Platinum Games trying to be too many teams. Like, that was on the end. Like, Platinum Games released a Transformers game. I believe they released a Ninja Turtles game. They were trying to release Scalebound. Like, we definitely started seeing Platinum B, Platinum C, Platinum D team versus like, this is Platinum Games.
Yeah, yeah,
that was kind of happening at the same time. Yeah, and to be honest with you, circling back, I don't even. What's the last thing that Platinum did?
Bayonetta. Came out last year.
Right, but that was they haven't done anything that's been like multi-platform in a while, right?
Yeah, I think their last two exclusives were
Switch.
or their last two games were Switch exclusives. I want to.
Yeah.
What was? They had another game that like it reviewed okay. I guess Nier was also them.
Okay, but that's been a while. That's been a while though, right?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull up their list because I'm sure we're missing stuff. I'm
not trying to pick on them.
No, the Babylon's Fall, Dave, 2022. That game that like they completely shut down like 3 months later.
Yeah, but that's like but that's kind of my point. It's been like a run of like four turds, right?
Yeah, so like they helped with Final Fantasy 16, but that's just additional work.
Go back from Babylon's Fall though. Like
so it's like Bayonetta 3 that got good reviews, Babylon's Fall, Soul Cresta it was like a shmup.
Okay.
World of Demons, which is an iOS game, so we won't skip that. Wonderful 101 Remastered, you can't almost count that because that's a remaster. Astral Chain reviewed well in 2019, I believe, but it didn't set the world on fire. And then Nier Automata,
right,
2017. So not the worst, but there's
where's like that Ninja Turtle and Transformers games, or am I wrong?
That's when you go to 2016. That's probably their worst year. That's when they had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Mutants in Manhattan.
That was a long time ago. So
Star Fox, remember they made the bad Star Fox games. Transformers Devastation is 2015. Legend of Korra 2014. So they had like a 2 to 3 year run. But
realistically, if you pull back, you got Nier and Bayonetta in the last 10 years.
Not so you do have the Wonderful 101, which reviewed okay, didn't sell well.
But it was a remaster.
That was 2013.
Okay.
And then you have Metal Gear Solid Revengeance in 2013 , which reviewed pretty well.
Yeah. Fun. But we're in 2023, so I said last 10 years.
That's what I'm saying.
Like right on the
that's
edge.
Why I went as far as back there. So they started the last 10 years really good, and they ended the last 10 years really good. That middle chunk is where...
But that middle chunk is where Scalebound was being made.
Yes. That's when they stretched themselves too thin, and that's when... I think... Because
I feel like we saw Scalebound at our last E3.
No. It was already canceled by then. It was the one Xbox show we attended.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would have been like 2017.
Yeah. So again, right in that middle of in their mud.
Yeah.
So
that was
I don't
definitely
know.
a dark period. But since then,
I just feel like sometimes Microsoft gets the blame when it was probably really Platinum.
Well, the funny thing is, Scalebound gets canceled, and then they released Nier Automata, which was fucking beloved by like, a lot of people. So like because Scalebound ended, you got a classic in Nier. So it's just like Scalebound died, so Nier can walk or crawl, wherever that metaphor is.
Yeah.
So
all right. I mean, I didn't mean to go down the tangent on that, but it's just like 100%. Like Microsoft needs to in the next 18 months. Like we need to see some cadence of some software releases. Yes, valid, but just because Microsoft purchases somebody and they don't immediately start turning out high quality product isn't necessarily the fault of the purchaser.
Especially when you look at some of the stuff they've acquired, the studios had just released like a game and then they were acquired.
That's kind of why they got acquired.
Yeah, so it kind of leads some stuff up there.
Yeah. But 100% Hellblade's got to come out. Outer Worlds 2's got to come out. Avowed's got to come out. Like these things got to be out soon.
Yeah. Yeah, but Starfield's going to be the big test for them, and it's going to sell well no matter how it reviews, because it's a Bethesda game.
Yeah, we're gonna see the first Microsoft-owned game in the last 12 or 18 months or 2 years that's going to chart on NPD and increase Game Pass subscriptions the month of September. It's going to do both.
You'll probably see the Series S as top hardware that month.
Yep. No, it's going to chart. Like the game is going to, because people are just going to buy it for $70. Yep. And then you're also going to see Microsoft announce an increase in Game Pass subscriptions on the heels of Starfield's release.
Yep, and then NPD is going to be like, "Hey, the Series S was the best-selling console for that month, not the X."
And then we're gonna see something about Series S's like catching on fire or burning, like melting cheese or something.
Like shit.
Yeah.
All right, the next story I put in for Dave. So EA has said, how did I put this? EA gives an update on college football. So was it last year that they announced that they're coming back for college
2 years,
football?
I think.
2 years
like
ago.
as soon as like NIL, the name, image, and likeness thing became a reality and it actually stuck, they kind of came out and said, "Hey, we're gonna attempt to make college football again." So
yeah. So Andrew Wilson during an earnings call said, "Many, if not most of the schools have signed up to be a part of the game, and there's an official license for that. But players have not been added, and they are working on those licenses right now." So they basically said it's very complicated working with all those governing bodies for the players in order to get their likenesses and names in the game. It has been about 10 years since the last NCAA came out. Last one came out in 2013, and that was NCAA 2014.
and they didn't have to player scan.
They didn't. Yeah.
They did not player scan.
Yeah. This would be the first time they
Yes.
ever did that because of what you just said, the NIL.
Yeah.
When EA first announced college sports was coming back, it caused EA stock to reach an all-time high. So I'm assuming it is very important for them to get the players, but it's not make or break because they didn't have them prior. This is worth pointing out, though, because, Dave, if you remember about 2 months ago, there was that report that the I forget what the initials are for it. The College Football Players Association, I believe, the CFBPA or something. They basically were telling players do not sign any deal with EA because the offer is too low. And that's when it was reported that EA basically allocated $5 million to acquire all the player likenesses, which equated to like $500 per player, which is why the Player Association was saying like, hey, don't sign a contract with EA. They need to pay more money, which now this makes sense that Andrew Wilson is like, hey, we've signed everything except the players because it's complicated. David,
I don't know the answer to this though. Like, yeah, I 100%. If you're in a video game, like you need to be compensated. Now, what that amount of compensation is, like, if you're going to give me $500 for me to, however long it takes for you to scan my body, like, okay, yes, are they going to make tons and millions of dollars off of having all the correct player scans? Yeah, but there's like 155 athletes on every football team in all Division I football teams, and then like I don't know, this is the part of like where NIL struggles in general. Like everybody's like, oh well, the quarterback's going to make more money than the offensive lineman. Yeah, no shit, he's the quarterback.
It's the same thing we're having in the NFL right now.
Yeah,
where, like running backs are now like, hey, the quarterbacks are getting paid.
Yeah,
we need to get paid
so
too.
I mean, I don't know the answer. Like, the person you put on the cover, 100% should get more of the money than anybody else in the game. Like, yeah. Like, does every quarterback get a different amount than every wide receiver and every offensive lineman in the game? Like, and then and then you have a freshman in the game that you don't even know if this person's going to be good by the time they become a senior. There's so much dynamic, even if they make it all the way to their senior year. There's so many dynamics of what's going on. I agree with EA in terms of, okay, here's a flat fee if you want to be in the game. This is how much we give you. If you don't, you're not in the game. Like,
yeah, I wouldn't.
Is $500 enough? It's better than $0.
Yeah, they could definitely increase that amount, but at a certain point, it's just like.
Where do you stop, though?
No, that's what I was going to say. It's like, where's the line? Because like $5 million to allocate to all the players when you're talking about the franchise, it's going to make $1 billion. That's fucking lowballing. But at a certain point, like, I feel like they need to kind of tier, like how they pay people out. Maybe that's what they're trying to figure out right now. It's just like, hey, as you said, like, are you going to have the practice squad?
Well, I think. And I'm not 100% for sure on this, but the NFLPA, NHLPA, NBAPA, MLBPA, like all the players' associations with professional teams, they sign an agreement with the game developer because their logo is always in the game. The PA logo is always in the game. And if I had to assume anything, like if you're a member of the Players Association, then you're in the game. Like that's kind of just came with the contract, which is why Jordan. Most people don't know this, why Michael Jordan wasn't in a lot of NBA games, because he wasn't a member of the Players Association. He wasn't voted. He never voted on collective bargaining agreements. He for a long time, he was not a member of the Players Association. But at the same time, that didn't make him excluded from the Players Association rules. It just meant that he didn't have to do things that the Players Association did. You
he
become
didn't
a
get part of the pension that the Players Association has. Not that he needed it.
But it also meant that he didn't have to. He wasn't like obligated to do certain things that are collectively bargained through the Players Association. That's why he didn't have to show up for post-game interviews if he didn't want to.
Yeah.
I think it actually goes back to, like, if you go all the way back, it goes back to when he wore red shoes. Like, that was a Players Association rule or an NBA rule. It
was an NBA rule that Players Association agreed to, but since he never agreed to that rule, he could.
There was a bunch of weird stuff, and he wasn't the only player. There was other players for a long time, but then it was different with like in Major League Baseball, because when they did like Major League Baseball presents Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball, like Ken Griffey got a certain amount of money for that because his name was on the cover, or his name was on the game. But for a long time we saw other games and other sports games come out that didn't have Players Association licensing, and we saw them fail fail miserably, and we continue to see that to this day. Even if it's a great NFL Blitz ripoff game, if it doesn't have names in it, it just fails. I don't think the college thing is as big of a deal as people really think it is, because like me, at one point in time, that was an avid NCAA player. I had dynasties that went on for 12, 14, 16, 18 years. I was using AI-generated names anyways at that point in time, because you're done in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't understand this. Like, yeah, I get the player-creator thing, and that people went through and did rosters. Guess what? That's going to happen anyways. Like, it's going to happen.
That might happen because, like EA
unless
basically...
they don't allow custom naming.
Yeah, unless they, which could be something that the Players Association wants taken out of, like, hey, we'll agree to this deal, but there can't be custom created for the people that didn't agree to a deal.
And that sucks, because if I'm EA, I'm like, okay, what do we do after a player plays our game for 4 seasons?
But that's when EA is just like, we got to get the next game going, because this is going to be yearly.
I know, but a lot of people, like, I can finish it. Like, did you ever used to play franchise modes on anything, or Road to the Show? Like, you can finish.
You can go.
You can take a player to retirement, like in before the next game comes out. So I'm just saying, like, in theory, I could finish 4 years of college playing NCAA college in 4 months.
Oh yeah, but that's when they just like, okay, we only have AI generated players pop up and fill things out, just to compensate for it. That aren't like people having custom players in there. It's just like, hey, is AI generated.
But that's how they got in trouble, because their randomizers, made a player play on University of Michigan that was 6'2", black, and had dreads, and wore number 14. And that's how they got in trouble. Because the AI generated, it just was too convenient.
That's the route they're going to end up having to go. I don't know what the solution is going to be for college football. Yes, I think the players do need to get paid, but I would almost wonder, like, how much do you think, like, the platoon player on, like, a baseball team is getting for their likeness being in MLB The Show? So I wonder what the college athletes can go off of a basis, because $500 does seem pretty low to me. I just don't know. Like, I would feel like you would have to tier it in terms of, like, hey, the starters get paid this much and the bench people get paid this much. Or maybe you just have the starting lineups be the real people, and then you do everyone else is just an AI generated character.
Yeah, I mean, just doing a quick Google search, it actually says generally individual teams / this is for I did NHL. Generally, individual teams / players don't get paid to appear, but their license gets sold. For example, EA has the rights to use all NFL teams in their games. They pay for that license. How much they pay depends on the deal, and more often than not, the numbers are not shared publicly.
But then the Players Association is the one that then dish out that check to the players, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
So EA is not doing a transaction with individuals like they're trying to do for college football. Right now in college football, they're trying to make deals with individual players, because it doesn't really sound like there's like a full system in college football in terms of like a college football player association like there is for the EA stuff, or for, NFL, NBA, MLB. So it seems like this is kind of like some chaos that EA got into, and it's going to be a hell of a watch to see all this go down.
like Pro Football Talks says, like, if you had to guess, like, so we know the NFL contract is pretty big, was a pretty big deal, the exclusive contract for EA. Like, if you had to take just take a guess at like the number, how much money each player gets for Madden.
I would say it's probably as low as like $1,000 to $5,000 per player, something.
It's 28,000.
28,000. So that's a lot. Yeah.
They get around 28,000 for using their name and likeness in a game. Reports Pro Football Talk.
Yeah, but when it comes to, but this is the problem with college football is like, what is that number gonna look like? Maybe my 1,000 to 5,000 is the number that they should be looking at, but if the players, especially like when it comes to like sports games, I care more about the pro player names than I do about like the college player names, especially like I don't watch college football, but Dave, would you say like, you know, on a professional team, you might have like 1 to 10 marquee players that like everyone knows. But when it comes to college football, like you can't even say each college team has like a marquee player that like people are excited about because there's so many damn teams.
No, it's hard to. Okay, so if I'm doing the math right, it looks like there's like 1,700 NFL players.
Yeah.
Okay. $28,000 a player. 47,488,000. So that's $47.5 million, right?
Yeah.
All right. They signed I think it was $1.5 billion deal. I don't know where the answer is. Like you said, and it usually like in an NFL game, like you get everything. Like I can still play if I wanted to historic team of Barry Sanders, like that you're in the NFLPA, you can always do that,
which was a separate association for like MLB and
right.
NBA.
Yeah, so like those things all exist. College is weird because you're in the game potentially just for 1 year. Like you could get kicked out of college, you could fail, you could drop out, you could get hurt, you could go to the NFL, you could like there's so many things that could happen. Like I don't know, man. Like this is hard.
Yeah, this is a problem EA walked in on because there was no expectations for having the players in the game based off previous iterations. Right. And now that like they probably thought it was a slam dunk of like, oh, now we can sign deals, let's sign deals, and then it's like, oh shit, this is going to be expensive or a pain in the ass as like, you know, because you're gonna have some players that are just like, why did the Texas player get significantly more money than me? It's like, well, because you play for a school no one gives a shit about. Like it's gonna come down to that. And then like, what if you're a Heisman winner and you go back to college the next year? Like you're gonna ask for significant more. There's
15,000 players in Division I.
Yeah, that's wild.
I'm just like,
but like, how screwed is EA gonna be? Like I said, like if you win a Heisman, like can you win a Heisman like your junior year? Sorry.
Yes, you can win it as a freshman. You can win it as a freshman. It's happened. Okay. And then you can't leave if you want to go to the NFL. You can't leave until 3 years after high school graduation. Like you can't.
So like, what if there's a freshman Heisman winner? You know how much money they're going to ask EA for their sophomore?
They got to figure out like a flat rate because again, just running the numbers, like $500 a player sucks, but that's $7.5 million.
Yeah.
Like what's going to do better, Madden or NCAA? Like Madden. Like Madden is going to do better. And should an NFL player, the cost to put NFL players in the game be double what it costs to put college players in the game? Yeah. Like breaking that number down, $500 might be relatively fair. Does it sound low? Yeah, but there's 15,000 of you.
Yeah, and also like 500 was the number that was thrown out on average, which means there are players that were probably being like, "Hey, we'll give you 25,000 because we think you're going to be a Heisman finalist next year." And then you might have had someone as low as $100 because they're the third string punter on like another team.
Yeah, but circling back to what I said, everybody knew who Jordan was. Everybody who knew who number 99 on the Bulls was.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then like people would go into the attribute editor to make those people that much better.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll move on for this. I have a feeling this makes me think this game is like 2 years away instead of like 1 year away. Because God, that's got to be hell. There's no way they're scanning everyone. Like it's gonna be like, give us your best picture, and we'll do our best to AI generate you into the game.
Yeah.
Because God.
Yeah, because this is not like MLB. Like again, they can go to. I think that they go to the rookie combine.
They go to the rookie combine, and then I think they set up camp in like the spring training. You know.
No, but I think for the most part, if they go to the rookie combine. they get most of what they need now.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of use that forever. You
right.
know, you're not going to want to put much work in.
They scan Trevor Lawrence once, and then then he's in the league for 12 years. Tom Brady got scanned one time.
Yeah, and then they just tweak from there. Maybe they ask him when he was the cover athlete to come in one more time and get rescanned. But for the most part, you use the same model and tweak it as needed. But you're not going to ask like the second string quarterback on like a random college team and scan him every year, or bother to scan him once, period. Because it's just like
just do the 2K face thing and just send it to him.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Like it's gonna be like, hey, just send us a picture and we'll do our best to not like bastardize your face. All right, we'll move on to the next story before Dave gets caught on college football. So Final Fantasy 14 had their Fanfest this past weekend. It's why I was in Vegas. I didn't go, but Sarah and her friend went, and I just kind of went to Vegas to hang out. And there was some decent news. They did announce like their new expansion coming out in summer 2024. They announced like what their patch stuff is going to do. It's kind of fascinating to see them be like, okay, so patch 6.5 is going to include this feature, 7.0 is going to include this feature, because they go in way more detail than the normal game would. But the biggest news came when Yoshi P, the director of the game, brought out Phil Spencer to the stage, and Phil Spencer and him announced that Final Fantasy XIV is finally coming to the Xbox Series S and X. It's coming in spring 2024, and there'll be a beta sometime before that. And they announced that like the free trial would include another expansion pack, so it's going to include like the second expansion pack. But this was big news because Phil Spencer has, for several years, has said he wants Final Fantasy XIV. It's the most popular MMO. He wants it on Xbox, and anytime it would be brought up, Yoshi P, or the CEO of Square Enix at the time, would say like, we'll think about it, but they're basically saying like there's no player base, for that on Xbox. So it finally happened. Phil Spencer came out on stage. It was a pretty big deal. It was probably the biggest announcement at like a Final Fantasy XIV Fanfest like ever. They even brought out the Square Enix CEO, who came out and said that they will be bringing more Square Enix games to Xbox consoles in the future. And then they all three of them, Yoshi P, the CEO, and Phil Spencer, like awkwardly shook on it to like make it a formal deal. So this is kind of two big things. This MMO is finally coming to Xbox, which means like the player base must be at a comfortable level for them to want to put the work in. And then the idea that Square Enix CEO said like, hey, more of our games are going to come to Xbox, which almost makes it sound like Square Enix is moving away from like just wanting to be like, we make exclusive PlayStation games and we make exclusive Nintendo games. Like it sounds like they want to kind of...
Which also leads me to believe that they're less likely to be acquired.
Yes, it definitely seems like that.
Do you think that there was like some 10-year deal with Final Fantasy XIV?
It's possible. I don't still... Part of me doesn't know.
A 10-year deal on Sony.
Yeah, no, I could see that, but...
But why wouldn't they say that at year 5 or year 6 or year 7? Why does Spencer come out and say 3 years ago, like, I'm actively pursuing this, I'm working on this, versus him saying, especially the current Phil Spencer, like, that's just not a thing that we can attain right now. He'll have a really nice way of essentially saying, like, that's out of my control, I can't get it on my platform at this current time. Like, he would say something without saying something,
Yeah, and that's where I'm at, of just like, I feel like we would have found out if it was a 10-year deal. I think literally it's been him begging Square Enix of like, hey, can you release it? And Square Enix just kind of looking at a player count of like, we can do it now.
Because it's on PC, right? It's already
it's on PC.
Okay, yeah.
It's on Steam. It's on Square Enix's own storefront.
Yep,
it's
absolutely. Yeah. Do you think that we'll hear anything else between now and spring 2024 about a Game Pass lure? Like a free 90-day trial, free membership, free any of that stuff? So they
already do a free trial that includes the first 2 expansion packs up to level 60. I'm sure someone in Twitch will correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, why it's there, so be careful.
Yeah, so it's gonna... That's gonna definitely be like a given. There could be like special like minions and stuff like that, and like little like mounts, Xbox specific, you will probably be having a Halo Warthog in Final Fantasy 14 on Xbox.
But do you see anything of like Game Pass paying for your subscription?
I think that would probably teeter too far, but I can see there being something. I think there's also like I tweeted this out on the DDG account. I would imagine this deal was made because Square Enix liked where not only Game Pass is going, but the streaming aspect of what Xbox can provide. Because if you have an MMO that's most popular right now, you've probably maxed out your PC base and your console base. So, and adding just the Xbox player base isn't enough to like do anything. But if you can get streaming, if you can stream this MMO and maintain quality, that opens this up to a whole other player base.
So whatever xCloud tech that Spencer showed him got him to pay attention.
Yes. And I can see this being like, hey, you can play Final Fantasy 14 on your phone streaming through Game Pass. Right. Like, and I think they did that with Fortnite. Fortnite's not a part of Game Pass, but you can stream Fortnite on Game Pass on the Xbox Cloud for free.
Yeah, and it increased their Microsoft accounts by like a bazillion or something like that.
Yeah, and if they can do this with Final Fantasy, this is going to be huge, because then like Square doesn't have to do any work. It's just they hand the source code over to Xbox, and then they do their thing. So I imagine it is like.
Well, wasn't it just recently Rare, or not Rare, like Valorant,
they League of Legends specifically.
Yeah, what division of, like, there was a big deal that they signed it was like multiple games.
Riot Games.
Yeah, Riot.
Yeah, so
similar.
Riot signed with Xbox that like now with Game Pass you unlock all the characters in League of Legends, and then you unlock I think all the heroes in Valorant, or you
sounds
get
about
bonus
right.
stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
So it could be something like that, to where maybe they get the third expansion with Game Pass, but I really think the streaming is going to be key to that, because that's going to open up, like, not that the UI is going to be the most friendly stream to your phone experience, but for people like you've done.
But it sounds like it's translated to a controller pretty well, and you could hook a controller up to a tablet.
The amount of UI on the screen.
No, I know, but I'm just saying you could, you could turn some of that off. I think the little bit that I played with it, there was certain UI I could just turn off on my screen.
Yeah, it wouldn't take Square Enix that hard to put a mobile mode on it, to where like, hey, if you want to do your fishing or your crafting on your phone, you can do that without having to use all the UI. So this could be huge for Square Enix in terms of like expanding that player base, and also just like keeping your very addicted fan base addicted to the game, because then they might be able to play like on the go.
And there is something to be said of like, oh, I already have a Game Pass subscription. Oh, now Final Fantasy 14 I can play, whether they could or couldn't, but now it's on Game Pass's store. It's showing up to them as a featured thing. Like, oh wow, okay, I can play this because I have Game Pass, and not even knowing that they could play it up to level 70 and play the first two expansions for free anyways. It's just more of like, it's in your face now. Yeah,
and it could be a thing where like we're not saying that like the game is going to be available on Game Pass. You will be able to bypass the monthly subscription or buying the game, but it will at least give you access to that game on Game Pass, which could be enough for people. Or the free trial, they'll use a free trial. And then when they hit that level 60 cap or level 70 cap, it's like, cool, I guess I will subscribe to this game now and get the console version or the PC version.
I've already played 50 hours to get to 70. I might as well invest some money now.
Yeah. So this is huge. I imagine when Phil Spencer came out on stage, and then the CEO came out on stage of Square Enix, I just imagine like a pissed off Jim Ryan, especially when the CEO kind of said like, hey, we're going to bring more Square Enix games to Xbox, because I feel like that is the bigger story of this whole thing, of just the idea that they went out and they said like, hey, we're actually going to stop playing like sides at this point. Whether we don't know how true that's going to be, but it's a good sign.
Do you think like something, I know they're two separate companies, but with Capcom and Monster Hunter, do you think the success of a player count of what we saw with Monster Hunter and stuff like that, like, got Square Enix to sort of pay attention?
I think it would have to, especially Square Enix is trying to make multiplayer games, and I'm sure at a certain point they're like, hey, even PlayStation is making their games multi-platform, like we can't tie ourselves to PlayStation or Nintendo when those platform holders themselves are releasing games on multiple platforms. Like, it just doesn't make sense to hitch our wagon to it, especially Square Enix very much is like, hey, sign an exclusive deal, and then get really pissed off that it doesn't sell well.
Yeah.
You know, even though they were Final Fantasy 16 sold 3 million copies in 1 month, big success for Square Enix. I'm sure part of them is just like, damn, what if this was streaming? And what if this was on multiple platforms? Like, how much better it would have been. Especially, you know, eventually, you know, like 16 doesn't have the PS4 player base. It only has a PS5 player base. So
they're kind of done.
Yeah.
Like the Final Fantasy 16, the numbers are what the numbers are. Like, I don't expect to see a slow burn or any significant growth. If somebody wanted to play 16 bad enough in the launch window, they went and bought their PlayStation 5 and bought their 16 game, and now they're done. That's, you know, that is what it is. Now, is it a great number? Yeah, it's a great number. Would it have been a better number if it was on PC and Xbox? Yes, of course.
And I think that's, you know, it took 10 years to get there, but I think 14 is at that point where it's like, hey, we saturated the PlayStation base and we've saturated the PC base. Let's add Xbox and see if we can get streaming in here too to see if that can increase.
But I'm also sure that PlayStation made its money back that they invested to make it exclusive to them also.
Oh, 100%. Like they sold the consoles that they wanted to sell.
Yep.
And now anything after this point is probably just bonus for them. So, pretty big news. I'm going to be interested to see like this partnership with Square Enix is going to do. And it's just good for, you know, Final Fantasy 14 players, because this means community might get a little bit bigger, you know, adding, you know, a new platform. But the next story, which is one I think, Dave, we revisit like every couple months. But this one sounds a little bit more credible. But Nintendo's next console might be out in 2024. According to Video Games Chronicles, they had multiple sources confirm the news that they broke, and then they also had other outlets come out and agree with the reporting. But the reporting saying that Nintendo could release their next console in the second half of 2024. The console will maintain the ability to be played portably, and it will still use cartridges. 2 sources confirmed to VGC that the device will use an LCD screen to keep costs down, dropping the OLED screen that is currently on them. And then the move basically is just to compensate the pricing, because it's going to ship with more internal storage, because the 32 gigs that the current Switch runs on just isn't enough if they're going to like bump up fidelity and all that stuff. According to VGC, key developers are said to already have kits, the important developers. And then
Nintendo.
Yeah, basically Nintendo and like Square Enix probably.
And Platinum.
Yeah. And backwards compatibility isn't clear. They haven't had official word on it. But apparently devs are worried that backwards compatibility will hurt game sales for the new system. If people get to take that, like, their old games and play it on the new system. So that's interesting to see that devs are actually worried about, you know, the huge library on the Switch transferring over.
Well, because they can't call it like Remastered Plus.
Exactly. But this report seems like it's a little bit more credible than we've heard in the past. But there is definitely, take this with a grain of salt sort of vibe.
No way. No chance. I'm sorry. No way.
You don't think 2024? I think this is possible.
Next year, because
next holiday.
they would have shown, they would have talked about like some feature or something like by either. Okay, so it's August 1st today. August 1st, 2023. So you're talking about this coming out in 14 months based on Nintendo's history. A Switch 2 coming out in 14 months from today. And we haven't seen an image, a leak thing. Nintendo would have acknowledged it of like, you know, like there would have been something. Like Nintendo would have said, we're working on a new console. We're working on a new thing. Like their history holds, like they don't announce and release something within 12 months. Like we don't hear about it for the first time.
Hold on. So with that said, trying to get the actual release date of the Switch.
Dead ass wrong. Now watch.
So March 3rd, it came out in 2017. Uh,
And the Switch was revealed in
October
March
2016.
2015.
October 2016.
Announcement of Nintendo and DNA's partnership on.
No, but it was first revealed October 20th, 2016. So October and then released in March. So November, December, January, February.
Really?
March. 5 months. Yeah, 5 months. It leaked like crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but like announcement to launch was only about 5-6 months. So we're in that window, and this is a leak. Dev kits are out there.
October. You're saying it came out in March of 2017?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was first revealed in October. I remember the rooftop thing. Yeah.
Okay. I guess
yeah.
Yeah.
But there were like 2 years of leaks before that, and we've technically had leaks, but we just haven't had the physical hardware leak yet. In terms of like, the Switch Pro was real, but it got canceled during the pandemic. So like the idea that like it hasn't physically leaked is a little concerning, but we're still in that window that they could announce and then release it. And they just might have the pressure to do it, especially if the rumors are true that the PS5 Pro will be released in the next year. They probably want to get some hardware out kind of around that time or before that time, just so they don't get caught falling further behind in power. Not that power means anything to Nintendo, but it still is kind of a bad look if you're already playing like 1 generation behind, but then you're going to be like 2.5 generations behind. Could be concerning for them.
Right.
Dave's in research mode right now.
Because like it was called the NX for a little while.
Yes. That was the code name, but it wasn't officially revealed. Like, here's the actual hardware, Nintendo holding up hardware, showing hardware until October 2016.
Right. March 17th, 2015, Nintendo announces new gaming hardware platform. Code name.
But they didn't show...
Code name NX. But
yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that it was a year. So...
We're in that window.
It needs to happen in the next 60 days. In 90 days.
I think it could happen before the end of the year. And then we will see what happens from there. But I think we are in that window. I can see this slipping into like spring 2025, but that's the latest I can see it coming out.
Yeah.
Just because they're not afraid to miss the holidays like they did with the Switch. Like they came out in March. So if it falls into March 2025, that's reasonable.
Yeah, unless it's... I guess maybe I'm remembering because the Wii was such a big change. Like, I think that they had spent more time marketing it, and the Switch was just like, okay, this is a console you can play in your hand.
Yeah, especially after the failure of the Wii U.
Yeah.
They kind of were just like, hey, get the idea. This is the Wii U, but like...
Yeah, I guess that's the other thing, is that they felt probably rushed post Wii U, and I feel like they're not rushed now. So,
especially if it's going to be similar style hardware or something you can dock.
Right.
I don't think that will need much explaining. The backwards compatibility stuff does worry me though, because I like...
It will be.
I think so.
It'll be it'll be like they did with the DS and 3DS, where like it had that little flag on it, where you couldn't put a Switch Pro game, Switch 2 in a Switch 1.
Yeah, like, they'll notch to block that out. And it probably won't boost performance, because if I'm not mistaken, I don't believe GameCube games were boosted when you put them in the Wii.
Yeah.
So I think
Nintendo doesn't know how to boost anything.
Yeah. So like it's just going to be like, hey, here's that game, and despite this hardware having more RAM and more processing power, it's still going to run the same.
Was Breath of the Wild was like a launch window, right? Like for Switch, wasn't it?
I think launch.
Yeah, so the reason why I just...
No, it was launch window, because Odyssey was the big game.
Right. But it was like, unless somehow they're going to pull another Zelda game out of it, unless like that's part of the reason why Tears of the Kingdom is like it is, and like, you know, like where they kind of reconstructed the same map while they were working on something else.
I think that's most likely the case. Like there's already reports that like they are working on like Odyssey 2 or something, like a proper 3D Mario.
Well,
which
I know,
is why
like,
we
yeah,
have multiple 2D Marios right
right. But I think that when Nintendo launches a console within the first year, I think you need both Mario and the Zelda. Now,
Yeah.
that could be as simple as Wind Waker remastered on the Switch Pro, like, and then hey, we're working on a new iteration.
Here's the Majora Mask remake that people have been wanting. Do you? One thing I think is a mistake though is
I'm still standing on it's not coming out in 2024 though, but
I feel confident it will be 2024, but if it drops to spring 2025, I'm not going to be surprised. I don't think it's going to go beyond 2025 though.
No.
It's not going to be 2026. That'd be crazy. I do think it's kind of dumb that they go from an OLED to an LCD. That just seems like something.
Backwards.
Yeah.
But that's what Nintendo does, unless it's gonna. And the only thing I can think of is it's going to introduce more touch control.
I don't think that would matter too much, but
no, I'm just saying, like,
But it switching from
connect it to your Switch One, and it's a Switch DS.
The idea that the OLED is so nice, and then to go drop back down to an LCD is just like a complete bummer.
Well, because in 3 years they're going to say the OLED.
No, exactly. That's what's going to happen, and that's going to be a fucking bummer when it does happen.
Yep. Oh, we got an OLED screen and a better battery, but the battery's negated by the OLED, so the battery life's the same, but it's a better battery.
I do like the idea that these companies still act like storage is really expensive.
Yeah.
And the idea that, like, we're going to go from an OLED to an LCD because we're going to bump up the storage.
Especially when Sony came out this week and said, oh, by the way, our new firmware will support 8 terabyte, and it fits in, it's like the length of my index finger.
Yeah.
It's like...
The idea that they're like, hey, and Nintendo isn't going to go from 32 gig to like a terabyte. They're going to go from like 32 gigs to like
132 gigs
or 128. Yeah, they're gonna go like double, and it's gonna be like
circling back. You can plug a zip drive into this one now.
Yeah, Nintendo would find a way to make it weird. That's when they get Sony to make stupid memory cards that are overpriced and why don't play Vita anymore.
Xbox has that now.
Yeah, Xbox does have that now. So yeah, they can go that route. But we'll see what happens. Dave, well, we could do a gentleman's bet for the holiday 2024. But yeah, I'm glad it's going to still use cartridges. The backwards compatibility thing, I hope, is there. And the fact that it's going to be like, this is going to be the most boring Nintendo console leap if it is just a Switch 2, but I'm fine with that.
Yep. Just making their games and their franchises just look better and run better. It's fine.
Yep, that's all anyone could want. And then if it means like third-party ones can run just a little bit better too, that's great. Because damn, do I get bummed out still when I grab a game on the Switch.
We can put Destiny 1 on the Switch. I'm kidding.
Yeah, God, if they do that,
that's the first thing that popped in my head. Like, I'm just thinking about a game that's like 10 years old. Like,
yeah, just
like they just did it. Like, oh, we're doing the Arkham trilogy on Switch, and I'm like, huh? Like,
that's actually what Bungie's been working with NetEase on is Destiny 1 on
redone, remastered.
Not Destiny 2, Destiny 1 on the Switch. But that's all we got for news. I'm sure something big will break tonight or tomorrow.
Yep.
Damn.
All right, so as of now, nothing has been delayed that we're aware of. So what we're playing and watching, I'm assuming your playing is probably very narrow because of Vegas, right?
Yeah, it's okay. So you can go ahead.
Watching, have you watched Twisted Metal?
No, I do want to watch it this week, and I think we might do a spoiler cast if you.
Okay. Well, I'm like 4 episodes in, four or 5 in. I have almost no recollection of playing any or remember anything that happened in any Twisted Metal games. I know who Sweet Tooth is because he's Sweet Tooth. I'm actually pretty impressed with the show.
Everyone is, and I was so surprised when I was in Vegas and I was reading reviews, and they're like, "This is really fucking good." And I'm just like, "What?"
I'm actually even more impressed with the show because like the trailer didn't do it any justice. Like, so, Angela is for the most part enjoying it. She likes, she really liked one episode more than the other ones. Full disclosure, it's got some gore in it, some pretty good gore in it, which kind of bothers her. It's got enough of like her pulling her t-shirt up when she's watching, like, "Hey, tell me when it's over." But it's Anthony Mackie, right? Yeah, I think he's fantastic. He's like in terms of what he's doing, and I guess I want to say the writing and the dialogue between the characters is really good. So I'm actually impressed.
To watching this, as I was gonna watch it ironically, now I'm like, oh, I actually kind of want to sit down and watch it.
So like I'm kind of to the point where like I was watching an episode, I'm like, I want to see another one, because I think there's 10 episodes and they're like 25 or 27 minutes. Mm-hmm. So and she's like, no, and I'm like, because I actually want to see what happens next. So it's pretty interesting. So I'm pleasantly surprised by it, because everything was stacking up of like they were just rushing this out, and now I feel like this might possibly get a second season, like in terms of the chatter I've heard around it.
I still think there's a chance that Sony, because they weren't really promoting the show and it kind of seemed like the trailer sucked, that this might end up getting Until Dawn. In terms of like, remember The Order 1886 sucked so bad that Until Dawn was coming out later that year, and Sony's like, not promoting Until Dawn. Yeah. And then it took several months for people talking really well about Until Dawn for anyone to notice that Until Dawn was like a really good fucking game. I worry about Twisted Metal.
I could see this in like 90 days showing up on another service, possibly, or getting released like as a PS Plus tier or like reward of like, hey, you get a 90-day thing to Peacock or something.
Then you would have to hope that like if it does pop up on another service, that it's not permanently tied to Peacock, because Peacock is like, I think, dead last in streaming services.
Yeah.
Like people really only have Peacock to watch wrestling, like, and watch like sports. Like I think Sunday Night Football is on there.
Yeah.
So like Peacock isn't really known for non-sports stuff.
Yeah, basically. I guess we could. The only other thing you could see is you could see a heavy push for it during those NFL games. Like to your point of like, hey, we found out that this show is really good. It's critically acclaimed, and we feel like only X amount of percentage of our users watched it. So now more people got to know about it. You know.
Yeah, like SummerSlam is this weekend.
Yep.
I expect there to be like half a dozen commercials for this if they're confident in this, because like the wrestling audience would probably fucking dig Twisted Metal.
Right, because my understanding, my base understanding of this is a television show that's called Twisted Metal. Like that's it.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Like you don't need to have any other knowledge about. And that was the thing that I was saying beforehand, because I did hear people complain that it doesn't stay true to the game, and to those people, I'm like, the game story isn't anything to fucking hold with prestige.
Right.
It's a car game that go boom.
I follow him on Twitter periodically. I look at his stuff, but like even Jaffe's saying it's great, and Jaffe's the one that was behind Twisted Metal. So
yeah.
So, but yeah, so that was a pleasant surprise. And today I played for a little while. Came on Plus today, so I played PGA 2K23, the golf game. That looks really good. So I'm kind of impressed with that. I downloaded the Sea of Stars demo. So Sea of Stars, I briefly talked about last week, is a game from Sabotage, the company that did The Messenger, which was like a Ninja Gaiden 2D thing that had a big, a little bit of a twist in it. It was really, gave it awards when I saw it at E3 years ago. I really liked it. I never finished it. I actually need to go back and play The Messenger, and playing this made me kind of want to do that. But this is an old school, like, RPG, like where your party kind of follows you in that little line, like 3 people are in your party and they're following you. It kind of uses a little bit of traversal where you can like walk up to a ledge and climb it, or walk up to a ledge and climb down, and a little bit of a puzzle mechanic. The demo was pretty short. The combat seems to be very simple, although it does have some additional layers to it. But just the puzzle mechanic was nice, and the dialogue was was good and funny and witty, like Sabotage games, so like The Messenger has been. So this is coming to Game Pass, and it's coming to the higher PS Plus tiers, Premium and Extra. Is that what they're called? Extra and Premium?
Essential, Extra, Premium, yes.
Yeah. So but the demo's on PlayStation. I played it on PlayStation. I'm not sure if it's available on Xbox or PC at the moment, but you should definitely check it out. I think it took me like 45 minutes, maybe an hour, but I really liked that. That was fun. I'm looking forward to that. It comes out at the end of August.
Is that that is the game that's coming to Game Pass and PlayStation Premium, right? It's the first indie that. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, you might have already said that, but I was like literally Googling it.
Yep, you're good. Yeah, and so it's just that's the part of the higher tiers of PS Plus that I don't like, because Dysfunction. There's a game that a friend of mine's playing, Dysfunction. Dismantle, yeah. And he's like, oh, I downloaded it on Plus, and I went to download it, and I didn't have it for free. And it's like, upgrade. I'm like, ugh. So then I started kind of looking through the PS Plus tab, and I got a little annoyed because almost everything they're showing is part of premium or extra.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I have premium accidentally, and I still hate it. Because premium's like the ignored tier. Where, like, I think the Twisted Metal games came to.
Yeah, well, it's my perception of what I've seen is that everything's on premium and extra. I haven't seen anything that says just extra. Essential outside of the
no.
But I haven't seen anything that just says just extra. Now it might not be on the store for you to download it because it's all cloud or whatever. But looking on the store, it's either essential or premium and extra combined.
Because extra, all the stuff in extra is in premium. Premium just has a few extra titles.
Yeah,
which are the classic games that they don't fucking pay attention to.
So, that was just a little annoying. So, and then I somehow this week I came across a game, Atlas Fallen, which is like another like RPG. It comes out at the end of it comes out like next week. It looks like it's like the combat looks very interesting, and you're kind of like surfing on the sand and fighting a bunch of things, and you know, it kind of gave me a little bit of a Darksiders old school God of War hack and slash vibe to it.
It's from Focus Home. They make those good like AA experiences.
And it's a 2-player co-op game. It supports crossplay, and it's $10 cheaper on PC.
Is it related to Lords of the Fallen?
I have no idea. So,
I gotta look it up because like Focus Home has a game called Lords of the Fallen.
Yeah, it just looked kind of. I don't know if I came across a trailer today. I don't remember like what I came across of it, how I saw it, and I started watching some other things on it and checking out some stuff and looking to see if there was a demo or something. But I didn't come across anything because it kind of like as I've been looking. I don't think that I'm gonna. I don't think I'm gonna dabble into Diablo right now. Because with Atlas Fallen, which I might pick up, and then Immortals coming out in the middle of August, and Sea of Stars, that'll kind of get me through, you know, the next couple of weeks. So that's kind of where I'm at with those. So that was pretty interesting. But that's for the most part like what I played and watched. So.
For me, pretty much nothing. I will be trying to review 2 games next week. But I was in Vegas the last 4 or 5 days, so just while Sarah and her friend Myra were at Fanfest, I was just kind of like chilling around the hotel. I did go video game hunting at one point, hit up Retro City Games, which is like south of the Vegas Strip, like past the airport, and then kind of looked around there. It's a very beautiful video game store. There's a lot of like expensive stuff. But I was going specifically for PS3 games. As everyone knows, I'm just hunting like obscure PS3 games. Didn't find anything crazy. I did find a game, Rock the Dead or something, which is a rhythm game starring Neil Patrick Harris. And where you fight zombies using like a Rock Band guitar, like the actual guitar, plastic instrument. So I picked that up because I vaguely remember it, but I didn't know Neil Patrick Harris was attached to it. It just seemed like an obscure game that I'm like, you know what? When am I going to see this game in the wild? Because it looks like it did not sell well, so there's not a lot of copies floating around. So I ended up picking that up. I picked up like Legends of WrestleMania, and then I picked up the High Velocity Bowling, which is a game I own digitally, but I didn't know they put a physical disc out for that game, so I ended up picking that up. But yeah, mostly just losing like $200 at casino was kind of my limit of just like, I'm not gonna throw more money away. So just enjoying the extreme heat that is Vegas in the summer. And I did go to the Final Fantasy 14 concert. There was a symphony.
That had been cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I went to a Final Fantasy concert a year ago. That was all the games. This one was just 14 based. But it was pretty cool. Like, since FanFest was in town, like they had all the singers from the game there. They had the composer Soken. They had Yoshi P, the director. So they were all on stage and stuff. And It's funny, as someone who only vaguely is familiar with Final Fantasy XIV, it is kind of funny when like certain songs would hit and then everyone in the crowd would just start crying like after a song, and then I'm just sitting there just like, oh, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought you guys liked this music. Like, why are you guys crying? Like just having no emotional attachment to it and just being like, this is a really good song, and then looking around and just seeing everyone just in tears.
I've never been to anything in person, but I've watched on Twitch or YouTube like orchestra for like Legend of Zelda, orchestra for like Destiny game, like and that stuff is kind of cool just to see like how it's played, you know, even though it gets digitized into the game typically, but just, you know, it's just things you don't really think about.
I liked watching some of the orchestra people, because you had like some old people that, you know, they're just like professional musicians that, you know, they took a gig.
You got a 75-year-old man on a violin going ham.
Yeah, and they're going crazy playing their hearts out. And he's
probably never knows where his music goes.
Probably can't even pronounce the characters' names that are. But behind him is like a projector with like video game stuff on screen.
Yeah.
So just seeing that is good, or was fun. And again, like seeing people like just breaking down in tears as soon as they heard the first note of a song. Like just me being like, oh, what am I in store for? Because this whole crowd just groaned at the same time in like a good way. So that watching that was good. It was fun, and that was pretty much it. Like yesterday, I was in an airport all day. We didn't get home till like 11:30 last night. Cool. So it was kind of exhausting, and I got to go back to work tomorrow.
All right, we did get a couple questions, so we'll kind of run through these questions really quick. So Sarah writes in, "What was your best and worst experience at a convention? The best part of Final Fantasy 14 Fanfest was seeing the Primals live, but I also got sick since apparently there was a super spreader at the event and no one was wearing masks."
Yeah, I didn't get sick, luckily, but I wasn't at the event. What do you got,
I want to
Dave?
say, I haven't really been to conventions.
E3 is a convention now, so that counts.
Right.
Like,
if you want to say the coolest thing that I think I did was probably the first time I was at E3 and I got to go to, like, I think it was Call of Duty Black Ops 3 separate event. And that wasn't even that was you guys. I left right after the Sony press conference. And nobody else was able to go, but just because, like, I think two others had to do another thing right after the press conference, or like History held that they were going to do this, and I was kind of the shooter person at that time, and that was like E3 hadn't even like officially started. Like, we had done a little bit of stuff on Saturday or Sunday, or we'd done press conferences on Sunday, and that was Monday, and that was like my first time there of like getting my ID checked and like, okay, oh yeah, you're on the list, go up here, and like trying to figure out where I was, and then it was in a bar or in like in a restaurant. And it was just like, they're like, yep. And I was like, I felt like I was so confused. So it was just like your first experience of like, yeah, you could just take whatever you want. I'm like, huh? I'm like,
But the thing is, I never got over that. I still, anytime something was offered, even if it was like a drink, I'd still be like, I'm confused.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm okay. And the guy's like, no, please take this. He's like, I don't want to look at this the rest of the day. Like, take this, please. And I was just like, so that was kind of cool, and that's where I started like meeting some of the PR handlers and realizing like they were truly there for us, like that was the thing, is like I was always told like don't ask for anything and don't don't overextend, I was told, or whatever,
like don't even take a water sort of
thing. And so and now they're like, no, here, like and he's like, one guy's like, what color is your wristband? I'm like, oh, it's this color, I gotta wait till this. He's like, no, come here. And I'm like, no, this is my wristband. He's like, no, I'm in charge, get over here. And I'm like,
I loved when that happens. James Stevenson from Insomniac did that for me one year. He's like, you didn't see Spider-Man yet? Come with me. And then he ended up like taking me by the hand.
He's still a great friend of mine to this day. His name is Neil. He's the head of a third-party PR company, and anytime I'd run into him, he'd be like, hey, like, what do you need? And I'm like, nothing. He's like, no, like, come on, what do you need? And I'll be like, well, I didn't get to do this. And he's like, all right, come here. I'm like, no, I got. He's like, no, come here now. And I'm like,
yeah.
So that was probably the coolest part for me. So I don't really know worst experience.
I know Dave's like trying to like walk a fine line, but even then, I can't really think of like anything.
Yeah,
terrible.
nothing like ever awful happened. I mean, there's been things that I've been to that I was excited for and I was disappointed with. I don't want to dig at them, but like I always was kind of disappointed by the mix events.
So the mix event was always good. I loved all the PlayStation stuff that happened, but there was one year where I think me and Dave we finally got access to the PlayStation stuff, and there was like nothing playable.
Yeah,
like it was just like, hey, here's a trailer you saw yesterday, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but I've been to like a Detroit Comic-Con, like compared to going to E3, like that was like dull and boring. I would love to go to like New York City Comic-Con. I would love to go to a PAX, whether it's in Boston or Seattle, but it's more or less like I want to go to San Diego Comic-Con because I think those are cool, and more or less I want to go to Seattle, San Diego, and Boston.
Yeah, I loved my PAX experience. Only did once, but I kept myself very busy with appointments. But like best experience, like at conventions would probably be E3 related, but it's just like those random interactions you had. Like I remember at one point, I talked to Ted Price, like when he was like in front of like the Spider-Man displays, like outside at that one outdoor event we went to.
Yeah.
The one time me and Josh went to see Spyro and Crash Bandicoot in like a hotel room. That was like my first hotel, maybe my second hotel experience, in terms of like, hey, we didn't have the show floor to show up to this hotel and then this hotel room. And it's just like, this is weird. And then you go in there and it's like fully decked out. And it's like, here's displays and kiosks and here's like all this crazy stuff in here. I remember meeting Pete Hines from Bethesda. Like just those random interactions are cool. I remember,
and those happen when you're standing in line to get a beer.
No, yeah. My favorite one is I remember I was gonna go see Titanfall 1, I think. And I stood next to this guy who he was just smirking and smiling, arms crossed, looking at people play Titanfall 1. And I'm just like, oh, are you excited to play the game? And then he looked at me and his badge just said Vince Zampella, who's the head of like Respawn. And I'm just like, you're excited to see people play the game. And then just shot the shit from him a couple times.
Yeah. Ubisoft always went huge, especially for their independent events, or not independent, but like their separate events.
Yeah, I love their offsite stuff.
When I got to go play Far Cry 5, I landed in San Francisco and I was in an Uber for an hour and 10 minutes from the airport, and I was at a barn.
Yeah,
like they tried to like take you to like Montana.
Yeah, that stuff was always cool, especially when they would do stuff like around E3 too.
Yeah.
Like when they would take over that movie, that like old timey theater.
Yeah,
that stuff's cool.
The Division 2, I still have pictures from that. It was in a previously, it used to be a bank in San Francisco that was like, the bank closed, but it still like looked like a very formal like building. And then during the event, like we went to have lunch, and as they were showing us like end game content of what happened in the Division 2 as a major plot point in the game, like the whole upstairs changed while we were eating lunch.
Yeah. In terms of worst events, like or worst experiences, I don't think I've ever had like a terrible experience. I didn't have full control of what I was doing, like my first E3 and my second E3. That was probably kind of not great. But as I got more used to it, I took a little bit more control of what I would do and then had a lot more fun. But like never really had like a terrible E3 experience outside of people not being able to pick restaurants and eating Denny's like 2 or 3 times, and then people getting food poisoning from Denny's. I believe Dave remembers that time. Or it was like, I think we went to Denny's like 3 times in a row, and like food poisoning did happen. Don't eat at the same Denny's 3 times in a row. Especially if you have 5 people sharing a bathroom. Don't do that. Don't go to Denny's and share a bathroom with 5 or 6 people.
All right, so Angela sent a question in today as well. In the spirit of the MLB trade deadline that was today, what trades do you think was the best one for that your teams ever did? You are more of a basketball Bulls White Sox fan, correct?
Yeah. So,
so
my teams don't do trade deadline moves. I specifically was looking at like trade deadline stuff, not like overall trades. And the only trade deadline stuff that popped to me is kind of a boring one, but it was important, is Jeff Blum, Blum. They picked him up at the trade deadline, the World Series year, and he ended up hitting a game winner in like extra innings during that World Series. So he was probably the most important trade the White Sox have ever made at the trade deadline. But there are fun ones, like when they traded for Ken Griffey Jr. for no fucking reason. And I got to see him in the White Sox uniform, even though it was like
the old Ken Griffey Jr. Yeah.
But it was still great to see that. And honestly, the Bulls don't really make big trades either. Like it sucks. Like the Jerry Reinsdorf owns both teams, so it basically just like destroys our chances of signing free agents and then also making quality trades. So I'm used to seeing my favorite players get traded away for nothing. Which I got to check on Tim Anderson right now. Did he get fucking traded? Okay.
No.
Okay. Good.
It was at 5 p.m. your time. So
okay.
It changed at 5 p.m. your time today. So yeah, like the most. So going back a couple years, Red Wings when they traded. Well, I think this is good. Michael might know this. I might hurt a little bit, but when they got Chris Chelios,
okay,
which I believe came from the Blackhawks, in hockey
at that time, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that was in terms of a trade deadline thing. Like that was one, and then the Pistons getting Rasheed Wallace. When they went on their championship run, that was the biggest trade deadline.
Was he there for both championships or just the second one?
They only won one.
I thought they did too.
The Going to Work Pistons only won one in like 2004 or 5.
But they made the finals.
They were in the Eastern Conference Finals like 5 straight years.
Okay.
So, yeah. So those are the biggest ones. What I think is the biggest trade that's happened in my lifetime in Detroit sports is when the Tigers acquired Miguel Cabrera, but that was in the offseason. So, yeah. So those are some of the biggest ones that stick out to me. And then Anthony Allen asks maybe the most heavy question that we've ever gotten from a video game standpoint is, where do you see the industry if you had to look forward 20, 30, 40 years out from now? This is a very hard question to answer. I think Michael and I were briefly talking about this before we recorded. Like, this is really, really hard. I fully think I guess the first thing that comes to mind is like, this will be 100% cloud integrated.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have consoles in 20 years. I don't think we're gonna have consoles past 10 years.
It would be like playing it on my phone, on my watch.
We might be full into Google Glass.
Yeah, like my watch
Apple
might be like
it
might be like a projector that projects like an image onto my glasses or something.
Yeah. So if we look at, like he says, 20, 30, 40 years, we won't go one by one, but in 40 years. Nintendo's still around 100%. I would say 75% chance PlayStation's still around, and I would say 10% chance Xbox is still around.
I don't think Microsoft maybe Xbox won't be around. Microsoft will be around, but it'll be something else.
It'll be renamed, and it won't be what we think of it now. But I think there's a good chance PlayStation will be around. But I think Nintendo 100% stands the test of time. It is a DC Comics. It's a Superman. It's a Mario.
Yeah.
You know, Mario's up there.
But everything will be whatever the apps are right now. Like, everything would be whatever the apps are.
Yeah, I still think we're gonna have AAA games. Like, those aren't gonna go away. It's just gonna be how we interact with them is gonna completely change from that. But yeah, PlayStation. I would put PlayStation 100%, but I just don't know, because I don't know if they have any characters that I look at now that I'm like, these will stand the test of time, like Zelda, Link, Mario, to a lesser extent Kirby.
I'm almost confident that I could, like, there'll be a Zelda game in 2060.
No, that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah,
you know, just like,
and there'll be a Mario game in 2060. Is there going to be an Uncharted?
Yeah, are there going to be a Last of Us? No, you know, like we found out, like, hey, Master Chief isn't as iconic as we once thought he was in a matter of like 20 years. He's not irrelevant, but feels like he's close to it.
Yeah, it's just so hard to say that, because his first one where he says 20 years, like, the iPhone isn't even 20 years old.
No, that came out in 07, 06?
07, yeah. So, like, that's the thing, is like,
high school.
The iPhone's not even 20 years old, and a phone, the way that, like, stuff is done, like, I get annoyed when I have to go to a computer now to do something that I can't do on my phone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And
But-
like when I graduated high school, like I had a pager.
Do you think PlayStation doesn't have any character brand right now that could test like you would see in 40 years, right? Or you're confident would be around in like 40 years?
Do you consider Spider-Man a PlayStation character?
No, because he's
Okay,
been around
yeah.
before that.
Right.
And same thing with Xbox. I don't think Xbox has one either. Like,
No, I don't think they have one yet, but will there be something that comes out in the next 5 years that could potentially be around in the next 40 years? Yeah.
same thing with PlayStation. Like both of them
Yeah.
could achieve
Yeah,
it.
both.
But
Yep.
I'm saying as of today, do you think PlayStation or Xbox has something that can stand the test of time? And I don't see it.
Ratchet. Maybe.
I would say if they put the effort into it, and like
Mhm.
Ratchet was really big in the PS2 era, kind of okay in the PS3 era, forgotten during the PS4 era. So like it would be up to PlayStation to be consistent, even if that means annoying people. This is like when we get like 6 Mario games in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would have to be committed to doing that, and I just don't see that happening. But yeah. I think this is put in the Facebook group. So if anyone wants to add to where they think the industry's going, do that in the Facebook group or Discord. Just curious to see where people think about like me saying PlayStation has a lesser chance of being around.
Yeah,
in
because
40
it's
years.
I think it's been 10 years and people are like, I would never buy a game digitally. Like, who would do that?
Yeah, now most of us are just like, I'll buy it.
Even
cares?
Josh. Even Josh
Josh.
Langford. Yep.
And I'm reverting where I'm trying to get
Yeah.
my hard copies of these PS3 games.
So.
Might start buying Blu-rays again.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
All right. So that is our show for this week. You can follow us on our socials. I am not going to say X or Twitter, so you can just follow us at Digital Days Pod. You can follow Michael at The First MJC. You can follow myself at Good Dave Hunt. Facebook group, Discord server, Patreon are all linked in the show notes. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great week, is having a great summer. As we're getting, I know some people that might be listening to this, kids might be going back to school in the next 10 to 12 days. So good luck with that. And yeah, kids going back to school, not them.
They got to deal with that shit.
Yeah. So
My cat,
you know.
uneducated as fuck.
No, I can tell that when he jumps on the keyboard. So, all right. So I hope everyone has a great week. Keep moving forward.
Don't be a dick.